Monaco64, home of alternative economics and contrarian views. So here in the UK, all the talk is about the cost of living crisis. And unfortunately, people are clamoring for government to help. And I have to say, there is no easy way out to the cost of living crisis. It's really a currency crisis. It's an inflation crisis. It's the consequence of inflation. And I'm going to be tough here. I'm going to say we, in general, are to blame, not just the government. We expect, the general public expect government always to be there to help them. And I'm going to quote Frederick Bastiat, who wrote this book, The Law, back in 1850. And I highly recommend this book if you want to understand what's going on with the philosophy of government. But this is what he said. The state, he declared, in perhaps his most memorable epigram, is that great fiction by which everyone tries to live at the expense of everyone else. So that's what's going on. You hear people who are actually very reasonable and clever, like Richard Tice, for example. He's on talk radio. He's blaming Putin for the cost of living crisis. Maybe Russia has withheld a little bit of the natural gas supplies, but it's not really the major reason why. The major reason why, of course, the major reason I would say is that not just on the popular side, on the general public side, we expect government to provide. That's called the welfare state. And on the business side, we expect government to bail out. That's what we have, corporatocracy and corruption, basically. And neither one is a good thing. And I highly recommend you read this book to understand what I mean, the real role of government, what it should be. And yeah, the welfare state, for example, is, in a perfect world, not a bad idea if politicians were honest and honorable and didn't lie or steal like we know they do. Yes, it would be good to entrust some of your savings to someone who's going to keep those savings in a box for you until you get older, so you can have that money back, and that money will still be worth something. But what happens, unfortunately, and it's to do with human nature, is that politicians, they can't help themselves. They will spend your money before you're going to get your money, and they overspend. And that's why we have a huge national debt, because if we lived in a perfect world, governments would have like a budget to run things, right? A small government, they would taxes, match that spending, and there wouldn't be a deficit, and there wouldn't be a need to have a national debt. So a national debt, the bigger it gets, is a sign that we're living beyond our means. And as I said earlier, there's no easy way out of this cost of living crisis. Hopefully, on an individual basis, you've been preparing for this. I have been warning about the fact that we're living beyond our means, not just since 2020, but also since the beginning of the century. I remember telling colleagues at work back in 04 or 05, when Gordon Brown used to come out with his budgets and promise billions to this group of people, billions to those, that it would end in tears. And yes, it's taken a long time, but it's not that I've been right. It's just that it's common sense. After all, the word economics comes from the Greek, and it means managing your household. So unfortunately, the only way for the nation, the country, to get out of this crisis is not for government to help us, but for us to tighten our belts, to cut the size of government. Yeah, not expect government to help us out because, as Mr. Bastian said, it's a fiction because we're just trying to live at the expense of someone else. And we need to wake up and realize that. And I know that there are people who are unfortunate. There is a minority of people that might need help. And I guess in the old days, you would help those people through charity. The welfare state is supposed to do that, but the welfare state has been a failure as well. You can't tell me that it's worked. And it's not a matter of party, left or right, conservatives and labor, because they're all at it. They've all been spending beyond their means. They've all been running huge deficits and running up the debt. And the central bank, the Bank of England as well, they've completely lost their independence. Because if they were really independent and they wanted to keep the value of the currency stable, they wouldn't have kept rates so low for so long and done all the QE. Yeah, they're also blaming energy prices for this cost of living crisis, the Bank of England and the government. They're not going to tell you the truth, that it's their fault and our fault as well for wanting everything for nothing. So what we're getting now is we're paying back. There's only one way to pay back. It is through higher prices, or which is like the flip side of a weaker currency, of course, and through tightening our belts. There's no other way. It's the cold turkey analogy, and don't believe politicians on either side of the aisle when they tell you they're going to help you with the cost of living crisis, because it's not going to help. It's going to make it worse. So before I finish, I'd like to recommend another book, and I'll put a free PDF for it as well in the description, along with the law. And it's this one here, What Has Government Done to Our Money? And this will help you understand what money really is. I would say the most important thing that you need to realize about money is to go back to before money, to barter. And of course, people still barter nowadays. And would you barter something of value that you have or you have produced for something that has no value? No, you wouldn't. You would want something of value. So I would say that's the most important thing to understand about money. And when the politicians come out and say, oh, we're going to spend 6 billion here, 10 billion there, they don't have any money. They don't have anything of value. And the only way to keep the currency that they issue through a monopoly power, legal tender power, is to basically tax you because you produce something of value. So you give value to that currency. And the more they promise these billions, the worse it gets for us. And it doesn't help anyone. So I wish I had better news, but one thing's for sure. At least you know now what's going on, and hopefully that will help you navigate the turbulent times ahead and the cost of living crisis. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit the like button. Please share it far and wide. Think about subscribing to my channel if you haven't yet. And you can also follow me on Rumble, Twitter, Facebook, and all these other platforms below here. I wish you all a great weekend. Take care. Bye.